Hi everyone, it's Bill Black, the Exit Coach from the Exit Coach Radio Show. You know, one of the biggest questions I get on the show is what exactly goes into a business exit plan and when should I start creating mine? Well, I always tell people that the best time to start was 5 years ago, but the next best time is now because you never know when you might need it. So we put together a free report that describes what an exit plan is and what you should know. You can get it free by texting exit plan with no spaces to 44222. That's exit plan to 44222. Again, text exit plan to 44222.
Welcome to the Exit Coach Radio Show, the show for baby boomer business owners who are looking for cutting-edge information as they plan their 3 to 10-year business succession and exit. Every week, we interview top professional advisors for their best tips, strategies, and precautions, so you can be well-planned. And now, here's your host, the Exit Coach, Bill Black.
Well, hey, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. Always a pleasure. Here at Exit Coach Radio, we've interviewed over 1,500 advisors of all walks of advisor life, but I've never had someone like my next guest, Keziah Robinson. She's a business strategist, CEO, coach, and investor, and she's described by her clients as a shapeshifter. That's the different part, who can coach business owners through any challenge at any stage of their business. Keziah helps small business CEOs navigate the operational and existential challenges of scaling up, pivoting, and or selling a business they've put their blood, sweat, and tears into. Keziah holds a BS in physics from Stanford University. I think that's where the shapeshifter part comes in. And an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, definitely where the business part comes in. And she serves on the advisory board of Private Packs, an innovator in the fast-growing femtech industry. Keziah, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the show. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your interesting background and diverse background. You went through Stanford with a physics major and an MBA from Wharton. What an interesting background. Tell us a little bit about that and what you do for your clients.
Well, one of the things that's great about physics, I did think at the time I was going to be a physicist, and then I started putting in the work. And as with a lot of things that our dreams when we're little, you start putting in the work and you go, wait a second, this isn't really what I had in mind. But one of the great things about physics is we work a lot from first principles. So really getting down to the brass tacks and not over-engineering things. And which sounds crazy because people think of it like that. But it really is a wonderful background. And I think bringing that into business, it's the same thing. And I like to take that to my clients, to really help them strip away. You know, they've read all the books, they've got sometimes they bought all this software, had 6 or 7 advisors, and they really just need to get back to the basics and really kind of come down to the first principles of how they want to run their business and how they want to leave their business. Yeah,
that's a good point. I think a lot of people do get caught up kind of in the weeds after several years of running their business, don't they? They get into a situation where, you know, what they originally may have thought they started the business for kind of gets overwhelmed by all the stuff. I hear that all the time from business owners that are really burned out. They're just saying, you know, I just feel like the business is running me now, and there's so much going on. And you have a phrase, helicopter parenting your business, and why you need to stop it as a business owner. What does it mean? What does that phrase mean, to helicopter parent your business?
Well, if we think of, you know, as people who have, especially with, you know, boomers right often, they've got kids who are in their teens, 20s, is helicopter parenting is when, you know, you're still doing your kids' laundry, right? They're in college and you're driving out to pick it up because somehow they couldn't take care of themselves. Or writing your kids' college essays, or doing their homework, or putting a tracker on their phone to keep track of them when they're really capable of living their own lives. People do the same thing in their business because it comes from a place of love, of course, and same thing in the business. Often you want to sit on a sales call, let's say, and there's no reason if you're running a business and you've got, you know, a half dozen salespeople, there's really no reason that you need to be involved at any point in the sales process, right? You're a sales strategy. But I have a great client who runs a real estate practice, and and when I first started working with him, I mean, he was trying to get on and close every single prospect, and he had a great team, right? But he couldn't let go of that, and he really wanted to still be involved.
Yeah, I think I resemble that remark. I think, that when I think about times when I really tried to expand my business, and I hired good people, and I just wasn't seeing the results, and I think that probably directly reflects back on me and my processes, and so I didn't fully trust that the people that I had involved, and we see this a lot in family businesses, right? I didn't fully trust. It's like, yeah, I'm delegating this to you, but I'm also watching. I'm watching, and that's the helicopter parent. I like to,
Right.
Yeah, you're in college, but I'm still going to check your laundry. Why is it so hard for owners to stop doing this? What do you think it is that doesn't allow a business owner to just say, hey, I trust you completely. Go do it.
Well, I think there's often people don't know what's on the other side. So you think about selling a business. Everyone's like, oh, I want to sell my business. I want to sell my business. Well, what are you going to do once you sell the business? So the same thing happens even if you're growing the business. Oh, I want to stop doing all these sales calls. Well, what happens? What are you going to do if you're not on all the sales calls? So a lot of times people just haven't thought about what's on the other side. They're trying to, I would say I'm helping people grow out of the role they're in, but you also have to know what you're going to grow into. And that is one of the things that is, because there's got to be something on the other side. Otherwise, it's just like a vacuum, right? And you're a business owner, I'm a business owner. Like, we like to work. And we like having control over our own destinies, right? That's part of why we run our own businesses. So the idea of having this vacuum on the other side where you have, what are you supposed to be doing all day? And what are you supposed to have control over? That's very, very scary. And so that's pretty much one of the first things I do with people is I got to sit down, we got to talk about goals, and I got to talk about what happens after.
Let's get a good vision on what you're going to be doing with your time, right, after you're not doing this anymore. And I think for a lot of owners, a lot of businesses out there may not be able to, we talk about this a lot, KAY-zee-uh, that a large percentage, 8 to 9 out of 10, try to go to a business broker and think, I guess I'm going to sell my business like they're going to sell their house, but it ends up not going well. They're either dejected because the price is too low, or they're rejected because the broker says, I'm not going to waste my time on your business because it's all about you. So if you're going to get out of that, how do they get out of that? What can you tell our listeners, some practical tips to break out of this pattern of helicopter parenting their business?
Well, I do think the practical tip is to do some goal setting, right? That's very important, and that's something you may need, professional to help. There's lots of tools and techniques, but I think it is really important to, I tell people to do an ideal day, to really look at, like, what do you want your day or your week to look like on the other side of the transaction, so you have that thing to hold in your mind. The second thing you got to figure out is what you're going to give up when you're going to go to the transaction. What are you going to give up? You're going to give up being the most important person, maybe having control, maybe having steady income. Sometimes people, they get scared by the idea of, I'm going to sell this business and I'm going to go from having a salary to having now a lump sum, right? So there's very much the mindset has to be there. If you've got those two things, then it's all just toolkit, right? It's that, from that point, it's really all process. And the first thing I say on that side is you got to take a look at your team. You got to look through and you got to really understand, can the people I have here do the work that I am doing at a minimum, right? And if the answer to that is no, and I would venture a lot of times it's yes, it's just that you need to train them or you need to set them free and just let them do the job. But if the answer to that is no, then you have to have a real conversation about hiring and how you're going to bring in talent that is not complementary to you, but is in fact competitive with you, because you're trying to bring in talent that will replace you. So it's kind of get your head straight, and then you got to really take a good look at the business And then you have to go and decide, is this a training issue where I need to, there's knowledge transfer? Is this a control issue where I'm just afraid to be here and realize that, you know what, my sales staff, they're all better salespeople than I am, right? Or they're all better architects than I am, depending on what your business is. That is also scary for people, but that's the goal. And then if you don't have that in-house resource, you do have to be realistic about, how am I going to find this externally? Or sometimes people look at you and realize your exit strategy is not really a sale. It's more like you're going to merge your book. Let's say you're a lawyer or something. If the business doesn't exist without you, you might be looking at finding someone to merge your book into and a business, and then negotiating something out of that. So sometimes there are many alternatives, but the first thing you got to do is figure out what you want.
Very good. So some really good goal setting. It's funny because I always tell people that it's about 3 T's, but listening to you, I think I've just added a 4th T. The 3 T's are your timing, when you want to be either part-time or fully out of this business. Second is your target. Who do you want to run the business? And third is the treasure. What do you need to get out of this transaction? But the 4th one that I think I just added because of you is team. What do you want? What does your team need to look like? And a big part of that is making sure that your team doesn't run away when you tell them that they have a new owner or a new leader.
Right.
So you have something called a 3D model, and I don't want to mention it and blow it for you. So what's the 3D modeling, and tell us how our listeners can use that.
Well, the 3D model is and I got this from somebody else, so I don't want no trademark on that. But it is the delete, delegate, do. It is the order of action. So to your point earlier, all of my clients are doing too much and not getting enough done. So that is when you start to get into, let's say, the part that often happens, well, I can't possibly stop doing X, right? Or I'm too busy. A lot of times I'm too busy to plan for my sale. I mean, I'm sure you see it all the time, and you're like, well, you're not going to have a sale to plan for if you're too busy all the time, right? So one of the things to look there is really going through the tasks and going through what's on your calendar and going, asking yourself, really, what action do these things have to happen at all? Often,
right.
I mean, there's a level of over-engineering. I had somebody once, and he's like, well, I need to send as a financial advisor, and he's like, well, I got to make sure the email gets sent like this and that. And I was like, does the client care? Does this matter to the client at all? No. So it's like delete, right? Take that one off. And then the delegate is that process of really saying who's on the team and what tasks. Sometimes it's outsourcing. Sometimes there's functions. I had a guy who was looking to sell his business, and he was like, you're going to pry the bookkeeping out of my cold, dead hands. I found my checkbook. I love it. I love it. I love it. Took about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer in his hands, right? So there is that process. And then the do is really, what do you need to do? What is at your pay grade? And this is another thing that can be hard for people is say, as the business is growing, it's not that you're above the work, right? You could certainly roll up your sleeves and help, but that work, the frontline work, the middle management as the business keeps growing, that is below your pay grade. So what is at your pay grade when you get to higher and higher levels? And that is that more strategic work, that is negotiating with partners, right? If you have that makes sense to your business to have strategic partnerships, that can be preparing, the operations for the sale. There can be a lot of things, but that's the do. So that's the 3D model. Delete,
yeah, I love that.
Do.
It's so important that as owners head towards an exit, as they start to say, okay, the next 3 to 5 years, that's a common timeline, I'm sure you hear too, is I want to be out of this thing. Well, are you the CEO, the chief executive officer, or the CEO, the chief everything officer, where you do everything in this business? Because you have to morph your duties and get rid of, like you say, delete, delegate, get rid of most of your duties, because you're going to have to pick up a whole bunch of new duties on the way to grow your way out of owning a business. And I think that's the key thing I see a lot is a lot of owners, the key thing they need to do is be the chief value builder. They need to start growing the value and the attractiveness and the sustainability of their business on the way to the sale. What you have something called 3 things every business owner needs to know before selling your business, and maybe we've touched on some of those. But if not, tell us what those 3 things are.
Well, we definitely touched on them. It's what are you doing afterwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think we said that on the other side of the sale. And then what are you giving up? The last one is who's on your team, and that includes the broker, where, I mean, there's a huge variation in quality, and having a really solid business broker is critical. That can be your financial planner, that can be your legal, as well as all of your internal team. That can be your strategic, the target, like you said, the person you're trying to sell it to. Who are they, and are you positioned with them that it's a team, right? So that they're looking to, there's money, but this is a collaborative process of getting the sale done, as opposed to an antagonistic, negotiation for getting the sale done. So those are the 3 things you need to know.
And is that an area where you come in and help an owner? Because what I find is that oftentimes they say, well, I have advisors, but have they ever worked together as a team? I mean, do they know each other? Do they talk to each other? Do they look at each other's ideas and shake their head, or do they nod their head? Do you get involved in that way to help owners say, look, we really need to be clear on these goals that we're talking about so that we can communicate that to these other advisors so they all have the same perspective?
Absolutely. And I am always encouraged, and there's always some legal stuff, but I encourage my clients to say, let's all get together, right? Let's get on the phone and make sure that the client is giving the same message to everyone as well, because sometimes the client is still, especially when I work with them, they're still trying to figure stuff out. So they may have told a lawyer they talked to 3 months ago something. Now that we're doing some work, they're coming. I've had clients where a lot of times there's some unfinished business. They want to grow the business. You could be in your 60s, but there's some dream they want to get going on the business. And so they've been talking to a broker a year ago about selling X, and now we're working to transform the business. And that broker doesn't even know you're trying to sell a new business, right? They don't know that you added a new product line or you went up market, right? And that makes a big difference to what they're working on. So I think it's very important to have the team on the same page and then work with people who are collaborative in nature. So that's often a good screen too. I've occasionally had people where they're like, oh, well, let's get the financial advisor on. And financial advisor's like, no, we do this internally. We have a this, we have a that, whatever. And I'm like, this is not the financial advisor to help you get through a transaction if they are determined to have you only use their in-house resources.
Yeah, I think one of the ways, especially for men who are business owners that are thinking about sports analogies is, are they a better golfer than they would be a basketball player? If your advisory team is a basketball team, then they're not going to hog the ball all the way up and down the court. They're going to pass off, right? They're going to have to, right? But if they're golfers, they're working on their own, and they don't really collaborate with others. They're just playing their own game. And so it's really important, like you said, to have that someone you can talk to as a business owner who can pull those goals out of you and get those into a written state, so then that can be shared with all your advisors so they all have the same perspective and be able to change that as they learn new data. I've had a lot of owners who thought they were stuck on one strategy, one exit plan, and then they realized, boy, it's not everything I thought it would be. So great tips. How do our listeners best get in touch with you and learn more about you?
Well, I am, if not the only one of the only Keziah Robinsons on LinkedIn, so that's always a great place to reach out to me. And I love just hearing about people's businesses. So please, if you have anything that's you just want to kind of tell me about your business, feel free to reach out. And I also, you can reach me through my website, which is www.cassia-partners.com, CASSIA-partners.com. That's the name of my business.
And just for those who might not know, Keziah is spelled K-E-Z-I-A-H. Robinson. Keziah Robinson. Very
Absolutely.
nice to talk with you, and it's great to have you on for the first time. I always tell first-time guests, if you'd like to come on down the road and share some more, we just scratched the surface today. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you for listening to Exit Coach Radio.